So welcome to the Lovefly podcast. My name is Paul Tizard, fear of flying coach for 25 years. And today's guest is Captain Chris Hall. And today I'm not talking to him about his captain type stuff, although that may well come up. I know for nervous flyers, you always want to hear what a pilot's got to say about stuff. But the reason I asked Chris to come on is because this guy is like a proper adventurer, very modest about it. So I don't know if he'll tell us some stories, and so I hope you really enjoy this. So welcome, Chris.
Thank you very much. Lovely to be here.
So I've seen with some envy some of your posts over the years. I know quite a few people have been on your adventures. And so what my understanding of what you do is that you raise money, but have fun whilst doing it. Is that about right?
That's pretty much spot on. I mean, it lives under the motto, or the phrase rather, have fun, do good.
Yeah.
And it's evolved over time to be what it was always originally meant to be, really, to drag people outside what they normally do, to tempt them into something they might not otherwise do or have the confidence to do or be knowledgeable enough to do. And so it's a rich layer cake of experiences in a single adventure. And one of those layers is normally the hook that drags people in. For example, one of the things I do is a climb in Morocco, and that's exotic and cultural because we gather in Marrakesh and there are opportunities to explore it. But in amongst what you might call, as a sort of curious bit of tourism, is this challenge to climb the highest mountain in the Atlas, therefore the highest mountain in North Africa. And each challenge has a different strength to it. So nothing is extreme. Nothing that I do is extreme. But there are a couple of days, maybe even more sometimes, where you're stretched beyond where you normally go. And then after that, it's off to celebrate at Richard Branson's most lovely boutique hotel under the Atlas Mountains called the Caspar Tamadot. And within that, 2 days of deserved, well-earned loveliness and spoiling yourself. But then off you go into the community, and there's a wonderful Berber community in Morocco. The population is made up of Berbers, amongst others. And so, any one of those things can really hook you in. And yeah,
so many questions.
Have fun, test yourself, be a bit scared, come back, get pissed with your mates, have a great time, make new friends. And, but in the end, have fun, do good felt like the right way to play with an idea. Yeah.
So let me get let me think then. What's the best question? The reason I thought it would be really interesting is because exactly that you help people to stretch themselves. And some of the things you've organized over the years would challenge anybody with their own fears. And so, you must be pretty fearless yourself, I'm guessing, but, if such a thing exists.
Yeah.
But how did it all start?
Yeah, well, like anything else, well, maybe not everything else, but for me, it started with a very modest first step. And one couldn't have imagined where I am now, which is 70 adventures later, and many different adventures in different countries. 3,000 people have done them. And, that's where I am now 12 years later, actually 14 years later, but I can't really count the last 2 years as very productive. So the first adventure was, you might have done it, Paul. Did you ever climb Mount Fuji?
No.
Right. So, you could do things on trips, and we often did.
Yeah.
And it was a pretty tough gig, but you could, on a normal Tokyo trip, fly the aeroplane as a cabin crew or pilot and have 2 days and 2 nights and climb Mount Fuji. And some of us did that. And I would talk enthusiastically about that, and people say, I wish I could do that. And I would say, yes, it's easy. Just ask to go to Tokyo and do that. And I could see that people would, in that moment, class it as too difficult. So I thought, well, bloody hell, it's so much fun. I think I can set something up for those that need a little help. And so I set about as a pilot manager. I was in the office, and you talk about fear. I had no real fear of confronting anybody that could say that it was a bad thing, or anybody that could say that it was negative. And furthermore, I planned it as a crew climb. So you imagine, a pilot or a cabin crew member twists their ankle and they're not able to operate the airplane home. There's a little bit of risk in there. But I reassured myself that that could happen walking anywhere. And furthermore, that they weren't banned from climbing Fuji in their own time. So that my job was really to provide the structure that would make it work. In other words, guides and, and make sure they had enough sleep before they flew the airplane home. Anyway, I proceeded to do that, advertised it, crew bid for it. So there's a wonderful energy about the trip. 50 people applied to do it in a matter of days. I made sure that everything was in place for it, and it was a wonderful thing. And I pretty much got it right on the do good model. So do good as a model is so interesting, isn't it? There's so much instinct to raise money, and I landed very quickly on the idea that the most important ingredient of have fun and do good was, first of all, to get people involved. And that if you set the bar too high on charity, you might not get some people who wanted to be involved. So I said to everyone, please open a fundraising page and you can raise £1. I don't mind. You can define your legacy for yourself. And by adopting that model, it's been interesting, because here we are, £1 million, in 70.
No way.
Yes, £1 million and 70 adventures later. It turns out that most English people have an instinct on their own to do it. And after 3 or 4 adventures, and I have many people who are repeat adventurers, they can't expect to maintain a too high a level of fundraising. So the trick really is to have a lovely combination of new people. So that's new fundraising energy mixed with more experienced adventurers. Anyway, on that climb, I think we raised £10,000. And next, when we got back, it was great. And I was lucky, you might say, that nobody got hurt. But I've done 10 Mount Fuji adventures since then, and not a single person has been hurt. Yeah. So you can see that it was all along.
Who's your favourite charities, or is it anybody?
Yeah, it's evolved over time, for sure. In the first go, I don't know if you remember, Paul, maybe it was the same in your time, but Virgin Atlantic had a different charity every month.
That's right.
So all the fundraising was about passengers giving loose change on board, and the defined recipient of that charity might be an earthquake appeal for something that had happened a few months ago in Haiti, for example, or more modestly and locally to somewhere within the UK. But in 2010, Virgin switched to a sort of more holistic long-term approach on its giving, and it got engaged with an organization called Free the Children. And that was a partnership that lasted until just before COVID. So a lot of fundraising before 2010 was somewhere else, but post 2010, it was a variety of places, including the Eve Branson Foundation, Free the Children, and others besides.
We've done 70 adventures. Give us a flavour of some of the things you've done.
So you can be a walker, a trekker, a cyclist, a tuk-tuk driver, a mountain climber, a motorbike rider, a sailor, and so those are the things that you could have done on a Virgin adventure. So sailing, yes. Well, imagine this as an adventure. So sometimes we lean more on the adventure side than the challenge side. So, for example, the Virgin Atlantic adventure, the Caribbean Sail, is a very charismatic sailing adventure around the British Virgin Islands. Obviously, the ring to that is interesting, isn't it? It's more adventurous, but it's interesting to be on a boat with a crew. It's a sailing boat, and you have to learn to be with a crew, and you sail. And within that, there are challenges, but it's not overhyped as a challenge, but it's a gloriously healthy thing to do. And of course, it finishes so charismatically with Richard hosting a party on his island, that it's irresistible. And some of what I'm doing is deliberately offering the magic that lies within the organization that is Virgin. I'm very proud of the fact that I'm able to offer people a chance to go and see and meet Richard where he is. I think he's a wonderfully interesting person. And a lot of the stuff I do, for example, a lovely cycle ride from San Francisco to Los Angeles on the scenic highway, 500-mile cycle ride that I've done 2 years in a row, through the mountains, not along the coast, but finishes in Mojave, hosted by Virgin Galactic. And everyone gets to see Virgin Galactic and the spaceship and talk to the chief pilot. And that's a ride I'm very proud of, because it's taking Virgin people into the heart of what is the most interesting, arguably, part of Virgin, the empire, you know. Yes,
I don't know how you have time to organize all this stuff. It's just...
I don't even know how I have the time. I'm a full-time training captain. Yeah. And actually, I think you can always do more than you think you can do.
Yeah.
But of course, I have a little bit of insecurity sometimes about not doing well enough in some areas because of shortage of time.
Yeah, well, that's remarkable. So here's a question then. So why do you do it?
Oh, God. I think I need a therapist for that one.
Well, yeah, here, I'll do my best.
Right. I think I do it because I get great pleasure from it, from seeing people enjoy themselves, come out of their skin a bit. I lived in Africa and India growing up, and I really love those continents. I really love those cultures. And I felt like I could do it without any real hard work. You know, we climbed Mount Kenya, you know, it was about the third or fourth adventure I did. And I lived in Kenya for many years, and I couldn't wait to take people to see Kenya, to go to Nairobi, to go to the Rift Valley. And of course, I hadn't climbed Mount Kenya before. So for that part, I was curious about my own experience and looking forward to something I hadn't done. So often I'm doing things that I think are interesting, that I think people will love. And I must say the core skill for me is under describing the amount of work involved. Because if I thought about the work involved beforehand, honestly, I don't know that I'd do it. But I think I'm the optimist. I see the pleasure of it, and I don't dwell on the hard work of it. But it has to be structurally strong, you can imagine, for it to work. So I'm proud of the hard work, and I must say I do give myself a 5-minute pat on the back before I before I go again.
Yeah, yeah. Well, so I know some people that have been on your adventures and they've loved it. And in terms of all the things you say about raising money, but doing some fun stuff, also stretching them, testing their own boundaries, putting them outside their comfort zone, all of this stuff, which you're kind of known for.
Yeah. I mean, absolutely. I have a terrific following, and I think you've always got to be careful that you are managing and delivering on each one, you know, and I do work incredibly hard to do that. I think the model that I've got, so it has to work on many levels. It has to be affordable. I'm not interested in charging people £3,000 or £4,000 and giving it to the providers. You know, at that level, not many people can do it. I'm interested in inclusivity. So people have to reflect back on the value for money side of it enormously. I like the party vibe. You know, I like the have fun vibe is really, really great. So evenings are wild and interesting if people have enough energy. And anyway, there's tons to say. I'll go back to you and see what more you want to hear about.
With the podcast, we get a lot of people that listen in, and one of the things I wanted to do with Lovefly was not just to deal with fear of flying, was to open the idea of, that's why it's called Lovefly, you know, like it's about, we're in this fantastic age where we've got opportunity open to us, and you can jump on flights, you know, very easily, and there's all this stuff available to us, all these adventures, and people have been thwarted because of these fears. And so I wanted to show a bit of a balance, and that's why I was desperate. I've been trying to, I was thinking, who can I ask that would just bring some adventure and
right. Think of the plane as a vehicle to get you there, and don't overanalyze the how you get there. Well, I think Paul, that's wonderful, because the world is a remarkably interesting place, and there are many cliches that you can throw in there, but they include the idea of making life interesting for yourself. And so the key skill is when you see the interesting thing in the corner of your eye, that you've got to stop and look and grab it. I can't tell you how many people say, Chris, I've always wanted to do one of your adventures. It was, one day. And I think to myself, or I actually say to the person, look, grab a glass of wine or disrupt yourself enough to go for it. And the first key skill is actually to not overanalyze the journey beyond it, but to take the first step. So the first step is quite clearly to say, I want to do it, I'm going to register. And then after that, some complexity arrives, okay, can we have your deposit? And there's a moment where you have to analyze again. But if you put off the decision-making on registering, being interested, actually going into the practicalities of getting yourself onto that adventure, if you put off doing that, you probably won't get to the point where you do it. So there are some simple first steps to be hooked into that. And they don't always mean that you can't find obstacles later on that stop you going. But it's that first step that's so key, where you might, in your world, you might say you throw risk aside and think of the loveliness and optimism of that moment.
Well, it's focusing on the, so for nervous flyers, they say think about the destination, and think about what, where you're going. The aircraft is just a journey, but having something magnificent to go towards, like the stuff that you do, makes it even more appealing. But just normal things that I think it's really important to focus on. What will I miss if I don't do this thing? Not letting the fear rule your life.
Yeah, I mean, the elements that are challenging within the adventures I do are often the things that most interest the people that I tempt into a challenge. Can I cope with a 7-day, day-on-day bike ride? And how competitive is it? How difficult? Those things. So most of my group are usually focusing on affordability and whether they can do the challenge. So doing a mountain climb, so you have to break it down. And I'm able to persuade people who are confident cyclists to do a 3-day bike ride to Paris, or a 4-day bike ride to Amsterdam, or a cycle ride in India. First of all, by saying that it's an all-comers ride. And as long as they're prepared to sit in the saddle all day, I'm sure they can do it. And so when I do test runs, I'm forever thinking of, shall we say, the intermediate cyclist, or even the early, someone who's just below intermediate. On the Bike Paris run, big support teams and jolly stops every hour are a real recipe for success. So
I just find you so inspiring. I'm just so pleased. I think the last time I spoke to you was years ago, and I know you're friends with Steve Ball. So Steve and I worked together on the Lovefly. So he's a big fan of what you do, and I'm just so honoured to get a chance to talk to you and to share some of your enthusiasm that you've got for life.
I think you have to come and do an adventure, and then you can review whether you're a big fan of mine.
See if spending 3 days with you is like, maybe it's not so great.
Actually, on that note, the most fascinating thing is that you can really think of when you do an adventure, it's when you do it for about 7 to 14 days as a maximum, you really don't have to overanalyze who you're going to be with. That you can really think of being thrown together with like-minded people who are up to complete the challenge. It's only when you go beyond that. So believe it or not, I did one adventure called Bike Africa, which was Nairobi to Cape Town. So that was a set up as you could do 6 segments. You could ride from Nairobi into Kilimanjaro to Tanzania, then you could do the segment from Tanzania to Malawi, and off it went through Zambia and Botswana and Namibia. And anyway, I had 8 people who did the entire 3 months. And that's when adventures become very, very challenging, when you are in a community for that long. Then it's psychologically interesting, the character of each individual. But my adventures, so I learned a lot from that. My adventures are a short because of affordability. That's to say, the longest adventure I do is 10 days, and the typical one is 6 or 7, and the shortest is about 4 days. And that deals nicely with affordability, but it also means that everybody loves everyone at the end.
It's a sweet spot, is it?
Yeah.
We don't want to kill each other yet.
No, they don't. So yeah, many of the adventures have become lifelong friends,
Yeah, I've heard that. I think I've even heard some relationships have been born out of it as well. So
yeah.
We'll go into that.
Ones as well. Yeah.
Thank you. I want to just say, if you had to sort of consolidate, you can put your captain head on, your training captain head, or your adventurer head, whatever you want. But the people that listen to this are nervous flyers at different stages of beating it.
Yeah.
What advice would you give them around that? Wisdom, anything you want to say, really?
Well, I think when you reflect back, on your life, on the opportunities you've been presented, it's a wonderful thing to operate in a place where there is a modest, acceptable amount of risk to grab all the lovely stuff that may come with that. So the risk of failure in the challenge itself, for some of your love of flying guys, the risk of being nervous or being overwhelmed by the flight itself should be considered against the achievements of doing it. So I can remember one quick anecdote. I can remember 4 girls crying on Old Delhi railway station, overwhelmed culturally by the noise and the smells of Old Delhi railway station. They'd never been knee deep in India in that way. And I went to them, I said, "You're going to be fine. You're going to be fine." We were just about to board a train to cycle in rural Rajasthan. And at that point, they were feeling overwhelmed and crying. And I gave them a hug and I said, "You'll be all right. You'll be all right." Anyway, at the end of what was, I think, 5 days later or 6 days later, they had the biggest smiles. They came and gave me hugs and said, "Chris, it's the best thing we've ever done in our lives. I can't tell you how much we've enjoyed cycling, how great the people of India are." So as you move through your adventure, you can learn and open your eyes, and sometimes it's just overwhelmingly brilliant as it comes towards you, and other times it's a slow revelation. But I think on the whole, no one, you want to do things because they're great. And so in the beginning, I always knew they were going to love it. And lo and behold, they did. So there you go. There's a story to embolden you. It doesn't mean that it's going to be easy always, but I promise you in the end, it's super rich.
That's like the sweet spot to finish, isn't it? Eh? on a podcast, what a great way to finish.
Yeah, for sure.
Captain Chris, awesome. Absolutely brilliant. And so grateful. And it's really nice to actually talk to you after
Okay,
all
cool.
this time. And I'm so grateful. Keep doing what you're doing. It's fantastic.
Thank you very much.
Very
I
inspiring.
look forward to seeing you on an adventure. Okay.
Yeah, find me something that I could do. Well, perhaps something I can't do. I can't do.
That's more interesting.
Yeah,
yes.
exactly. Well, you've got me. I'm up for it.
Okay, lovely stuff. Awesome.